Hey, you guys, it's Josh with Homesteading Family, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pantry Chat Food for Thought. This week, we are going to be talking homestead security, specifically a new book called Fortify Your Farm by my friend Tim Eng, who brings a holistic approach to homestead security. This is going to be a lot more than you think it is. It's not all, guns and hand-to-hand combat. It's going to be a really, really fun conversation. Looking forward to have Tim on here in just a moment. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor for helping make this available today. And today, we're hanging out with Filaree Farm. Filaree Farm has been a family-owned grower and supplier of premium quality organic garlic seed since 1977. As stewards of the largest collection of garlic in North America that is available to the public, their mission is to preserve the integrity and provide others the opportunity to grow more than 100 strains of garlic collected from throughout the world. Now, since 2010, Filaree Farm has added new organic seed products, including shallot seeds, seed potatoes, asparagus crowns, and sweet potato slips. They serve organic gardeners, plant nurseries, and commercial growers, as well as homesteaders, and they look forward to helping you grow. So get your garlic in the ground this fall so you have a crop planted and ready to go. And if you're not sure how to do that, we've sure got a blog post on it here at Homesteading Family. And I think that Filaree Farm does as well. Now, when you go place your order with them, make sure and use the promo code Homesteading Family at checkout so that you can get 15% off your order. This is very timely because it is time to get that garlic in the ground here pretty soon. I'll leave you a link in the description below for Filaree Farms. And thanks again, everybody at Filaree Farms, for helping make this podcast available today. Now, I'm excited here in just a second to bring on my friend Tim Eng. Tim is a West Point graduate and former Army combat engineer who deployed in Iraq, where he advised on critical infrastructure and fortification projects. His distinguished career continued as a project manager for the Department of Homeland Security, Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and the Department of Defense. Now, Tim has been a top-performing real estate agent in his post-military career in California, specializing in helping fellow veterans achieve the American dream. Tim found healing from PTSD through farming. This transformative experience led him to develop the SAFE method, a practical field-tested approach to homestead security rooted in military strategy and tailored for modern rural living, hence the book, Fortify Your Farm. Tim is also known as the homesteading agent, and he combines his military precision and security background with real estate expertise to guide families from city life to self-sufficient countryside living. Tim himself lives on his 40-acre homestead in East Tennessee with his wife and kids, and he leads a national network of rural-focused agents while providing exclusive consulting in permaculture and regenerative agriculture for his clients. Well, hey, Tim, it's great to have you on. How you doing today?
It's great to be on. Thanks so much for inviting me on, Josh.
Oh, absolutely. It was great to see you at the Modern Homesteading Conference just back a few weeks ago. How was that? Did you guys have a great time?
It was a wonderful experience. Sophie and I, we got on stage and spoke a few times, but I remember I had a packed audience, especially in the homestead security. It's a hot topic.
Yeah. And so that's what we're talking about today is homestead security, and specifically your book. I think, is this new? Is this a new book? I don't know how long it's been out.
It's fresh off the presses, so I got that in your hands, and I'm glad. I was really glad to be able to share that with you.
Very cool. FM 5-21. I'll get to that in a minute. Fortify Your Farm, a practical guide to securing your homestead. And this is going to be a fun conversation today, diving into homestead security. I think some of you listening are going to be a little bit surprised. This isn't all about guns, bullets, and walls. There's actually Tim is just amazing at thinking through security in a holistic, broad way that all of us can utilize, no matter what your environment is and what you think your threats are or aren't. There's a really, really good discussion here. So I'm excited to get into it. But first of all, Tim, what is FM 5-21. I'm assuming that is a military thing, military term.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, Josh. I get that question often, but I want to stay true to my roots and my military roots of being an Army engineer. FM is short for field manual, and 5 is just an ode back to the Army engineer manual, which was an FM 5. I don't know why it was 5, but it is 5. And the -21, 21st century. So that's my spin to it.
Okay.
Yep. And the go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I like it. And I'd love to dive in. I mean, I read your bio here as the entry, but I'd love to hear from you a little bit about your background as an Army combat engineer and your journey from that life to applying that knowledge, which you're doing right here in the book, to homestead security. If we can take 5 minutes or whatever. And your story a little bit.
I appreciate the opportunity, Josh. And if you had told me that I was going to get into homesteading just, oh my gosh, 10 years ago, I would have said you're nuts, because I thought I was going to make the Army a career. I came from the Army. I graduated from West Point, was an Army combat engineer. I deployed to Iraq, where I was responsible for upgrading the fortifications of really austere outposts, combat outposts out there, and came back home. And I got into real estate, actually. It was something that I did not think I was going to get into, of course. I was really interested in real estate investment, and I'm very introverted, but I found out that it's really about getting to know my clients and solving a problem that they have. And my clientele is actually fellow veterans. And I really have a passion for helping veterans out and helping them achieve the American dream. And the American dream at the time, back when I got into real estate, was to achieve home ownership. Well, that has changed quite a bit in terms of defining what achieving the American dream is, especially for me. When 2020 happened, we were already doing some homesteading in California on a 1/4 acre. And that was just having raised garden beds and some chickens. But when 2020 happened, we quickly realized that our world has changed, and that the food system was very fragile. So we moved to 6 acres up in Northern California from the Bay Area. We moved to Lincoln, California, which is up a little north of Sacramento. And we started to bring in ruminants. So we had goats and sheep, and we thought we were going to be chicken farmers. I had taken some courses with my daughters at Polyface Farms and thought, okay, I learned from Joel and Daniel. I'm going to be a chicken farmer. Well, just following the home selling market, Sophie is a lender, and we saw that interest rates were starting to rise. We didn't have community in the terms that, and we can talk a little bit about that. Community is definitely a very important factor to homesteading, but we quickly realized we needed others to be around with us that were, the same mindset, same values. And that's something that we did not have in California. We had built ourselves an island. We were isolated. We had great fortifications. I had redundancy built in. We had, oh my gosh, for power, we had solar. I had a whole house backup generator, several ponds, but that wasn't enough. So we started looking outside. Of course, we thought about Idaho, we thought about Texas, Oklahoma, and I really wanted these big cities to work, especially as a realtor, to restart my business and be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And oftentimes I work with couples, and one of the couples is more gung-ho about homesteading and does all the research, and the other one goes along for the ride, or they're kicking and screaming. Now, I wasn't kicking and screaming, but I didn't necessarily, take the red pill at that time. And Sophie was all about researching. And so I really wanted Oklahoma and Texas to work out. We went out there, spent a few weeks on our RV, and then we finally went out to East Tennessee. And I fell in love with that community as well. We did essentially like speed dating. We got together with the community and met up with a lot of the people who were transplants from the area, who are from Seattle and from the Northeast. And we asked them questions, picked their brains. I was able to also interview the county sheriff, as well as the local congresswoman who happened to be in town during that time. And so got to pick their minds and find out, what are their stances on things, and especially with the sheriff, does he work with the people, or is he going to be able, or is he going to just listen to the federal government and things like that. Things that were burning questions for us. We, at this point in our lives and in homesteading, we just wanted to get down to the nitty gritty and wanted to make sure that if we're going to relocate, we're going to relocate in the right community. And so that's what we did. We rebuilt our homestead on 5 acres initially in East Tennessee. And I rebuilt my homesteading, my real estate business. I still focus on vets, but now I'm focusing on homesteaders as the homesteading agent. And I'm helping so many families move from cities, from everywhere, all across the country. I'm surprised, like Michigan and the Northeast as well as California, and helping them relocate to East Tennessee. But not only relocating to East Tennessee, but equipping them with the tools. I'm walking the lands with them. I'm acting as a consultant with them. And not only helping them in transitioning their dirt into living soil, with amending and testing their soil out, but also now providing them with tips from my military background, especially in security. And here we are today.
Yeah, so you've taken that journey and experience from pretty much kind of urban city life, urban experience with a military background. Now you're in East Tennessee and still consulting real estate, but you're building in. It looks like this whole idea of homestead fortification, protection, security, and I love the word fortify because that really kind of gets to the heart of what I think you're sharing and talking about, which isn't just protecting yourself from the bad guys, or at least the human bad guys. Yeah. So what, help us understand. I'm going to dive into SAFE, I guess. In the back of your book, it talks about the SAFE method, which you've developed. And I think that's a good jumping off point to explain what you mean when you're talking about homestead fortification or security. And what people need to be thinking about.
Yeah. SAFE stands for situational awareness. A is for access control, fortify your home, and emergency readiness. Now, when I wrote this book and when I talk about homestead security, I know most people may think, coming from the military, he must be talking about how do you protect yourselves from the Walking Dead or from the bad guys with the guns. And yes, you can buy all the guns you want, and buy all the ammo that you want. I have a collection as well. Everyone does. But I wanted to approach this in a way where it's to be smart and to protect, not only because traditional security focuses inwardly on the home itself and the valuables and your family members that are within the home. But homestead security is more about the outside of the home. It's the livestock, the equipment, the machinery. This is where most people are putting all their funds and money towards. So the approach that I took was to incorporate what I naturally think about as an Army engineer, where an Army engineer is always thinking defense minded and always thinking about how do I create a defense in layers. And so by doing this, I created the SAFE method by combining what I learned from West Point, like core military principles. And I was a military history major, and that was like my passion. And combining that with my experiences, not only deployed and some of the principles that we put into practice and what worked against the bad guys, but now as a homesteader and as a real estate agent walking on hundreds of acres, I have an eye now what to look for, but even on my own homestead, what am I putting into practice so that I can sleep safely at night? Or if I'm not at home, that my family can sleep safely at night. So these are these core principles. Now, I also realized through my own experience, when I moved from California to Tennessee, I could not find a realtor who could show me what I was looking for. Now, there are land realtors, there are regular residential realtors, and that's what I was. I was originally a residential realtor in the Bay Area, and I was very good at that. But coming out here, there are certain things that I'm looking for, and there are certain things that my clients are looking for, and there's a whole laundry list of things. You can call them being super crunchy and whatnot. They don't want to be near 5G towers. They don't want to be near the electrical towers, and have a greater appreciation of this. And so that's something that I help my clients look for, and I listen to what they want, and I try to help them achieve those goals. And so it's a more of a holistic package, because not only do they come and move in, but I introduce them to the community, like where they can get milk, for instance, where they can get real beef. And so this is a lifestyle change. I want people to be set up for success, not like how I was when I came out here. I just really had to do it. When my wife and I had to do the research, and we just had to hit the ground running, and that costed a lot of time and money. And I want my clients to be able to hit the ground running and ramp up as quickly as possible and learn from the mistakes that I made.
Yeah, that's a valuable skill set you bring to your clients as a realtor, from the homesteading experience to the real estate experience to the military experience. And I want to kind of on the fortification and the security issue again. When people think homestead security, you know, we're kind of, you start thinking skills, and you're thinking guns, you're thinking shooting, you might be thinking hand-to-hand combat, you might be thinking surveillance cameras, walls, gates. Those are all valid pieces. But what are, and I'm looking to draw you out of some of the things you talk about in the beginning of your book here. What are some of the skills, the baseline skills that people need to develop before all of that? You know, those are important pieces, but before all of that, that help them not only move towards creating a more secure environment, but also just helps in their homesteading environment as well.
Yeah, that's a great question, because everything that you mentioned, yes, those are vital skills to have, but homestead security can be done at any age, and it doesn't matter where you're at in your homesteading, or like your physical ability. I don't want to say that. I want you to be able to read from my book and then be able to apply what you've learned. And it doesn't matter how old you are, and so let me get to the point here. The skills that you're talking about here we'll start off with situational awareness. These are people skills. And something that people may not think about, especially getting into homesteading. And I'll tell you this, like, this was a weakness of mine. I'm an introvert, and this is a muscle that I need to exercise and force myself to meet and greet with people when I go to the local co-op, for instance, or strike up a conversation at the local coffee shop. Because this is through conversation, I'm going to learn the real news. I'm going to learn what's going on in the local town. Who are the reliable and trustworthy electricians, for instance, or the plumbers? I'm no longer working in the city where I can easily Yelp these people and find thousands of reviews. When I'm out here, it's through word of mouth, for instance, and that's through situational awareness. And another aspect would be, like, for the fortifying on the F, is actually organizational skills. For instance, it's not just having a huge stockpile of ammo, but where's everything at? And this is something that I've applied from my military experience. Put everything back where it belongs. Every little thing has a place. And I used to think, oh my gosh, we used to have like carpenter kits and things like that in the Army engineers world, and they had little things, like they had every little detail, minute detail of pieces of equipment and where they belonged. And we would even go through the list like once a quarter to make sure we have every piece of item there. But they were teaching us attention to detail, and that everything has a purpose and it needs to go back to where they belong. And so in the case of an emergency, and let's be real, it's not going to be a bunch of bad guys breaking down your door at the homestead. It's more likely going to be a natural disaster. It's going to be a weather element that's going to hit, a hurricane, a freak hurricane for us, for instance. And are you going to be ready? Or is your brand new gas generator still in its box and you didn't put the oil in it yet? You know, you have to go through and do these dry run rehearsals with your family, with your loved ones, whoever is living with you, to make sure they all know their roles and responsibilities. And that's something that I talk about under E for emergency readiness, but going through the drills, and that everyone, like even my 9-year-old, she has a responsibility to charge all the batteries for the radios and for the flashlights so that when we do need them, they're going to be ready. So these are some examples of skills that we need to either learn or to, work on because they are going to be vital in an emergency.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. I'd like to go back to situational awareness for a moment and talk about a core skill that I think anybody can develop, and it's essential on the homestead, whether you're talking about security, where you're talking about being around animals, taking care of animals, even relationships, so many things, and that is observation. How important and how do people learn and apply observation in the context of situational awareness?
Well, observation starts from day one when you walk on that new piece of property, or if you're just getting into homesteading, you're evaluating different properties. When you walk the property, the observation is not just on the home itself, but looking around the home. The land itself, yes, but I often think about, well, if I'm driving around from the outside perimeter and I'm looking into the property, what do I see? And that's what a predator would look at when they're casing the property, whether it's an animal, whether it's a human being. And what are the likely, we call them in the military, avenues of approach, access routes? Because animals and humans are all creatures of habit. We tend to go and gravitate towards a path of least resistance. And to identify these paths ahead of time, this is the observation. And then once you are checking out your house, or if you're building a home, hopefully you're on the top and you're looking down and you have some of that command view presence. But do you have 360-degree views? I mean, let's be realistic. Most places won't have 360-degree views from their home, but identifying where your weaknesses are, where are your blind spots, and you can take advantage of technology, whether it's cameras, through a combination of cameras and lighting equipment. And cameras I have mixed feelings on because I don't know exactly who is looking on the other side sometimes, if you get into that. But cameras can be used for good and to help mitigate against those blind spots.
Yeah. And I think observation is one of those skills that's daily, moment to moment. The more we can learn to be observant around us, understanding pattern, right? As a permaculturist, pattern is huge, but pattern also helps us secure our environment. Understanding, you talk about this in your book, understanding how, say, wildlife moves through your property, or how cars drive by. You might look at how your own animals move, how your own people move on the property, or how your guests move on the property. So much of that helps you, get very, very familiar and understand what's going on in your property and when something's amiss.
I was going to mention that for me, it was my first year on this 40-acre property and noticing how long the snow sits. And that, for instance, would show us, where not to plant, but and where not to grow food. And what I mentioned, and it's also in my video course, but it's in my book, is that once you do move on to your homestead, the hardest thing is to just observe and not go out and buy stuff and start actioning on things. And that's really hard for me. I'm like type A, I want to action on things, but you can save a lot of time and money, but by just sitting and observing. And to your point, like what culturists do, they sit and observe and notice the patterns, like the sun patterns and everything. And that's so key because that's going to save you time and money in the long run.
Yeah. I tell my people here on the homestead, when you're moving about, you're in general, not when you're moving about, you're observing. So yeah, there are moments where you're going to go sit and reflect and be quiet. But when we're moving from point A to point B, doing chores, going somewhere, I tell my people here, you're not walking and staring at the ground. You're not walking and daydreaming.
Yeah.
You're thinking about where you're going, what you're doing. And as you're doing that, you're just watching your environment. You're being aware, kind of like driving, right? You're always aware 360 degrees, or you should be if you're a good driver. And I'm sure this is very relevant in the military context, but it's just good living. And when you become aware, whenever you're moving, you're dealing, with so much as far as fortifying, whether you're seeing a problem that needs to be solved before it becomes a bigger problem, whether you're noticing a wounded animal, whether you're noticing a pattern of maybe a dangerous animal moving. I mean, there's just so many things as we practice that awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things you can pick up on. And one of the things I always encourage my clients to do is always walk your property, walk the perimeter, walk the fence line, because you never know. I mean, just through wind and whatnot, the tree branches fall and start shorting out your fence line, or like you mentioned, just noticing the animal patterns, animal tracks as well, so you can safeguard your chickens and other animals that you have on your homestead.
Yeah. Let's talk about I want to get through safe. Let's talk about access control. When you talked about snow, that made me think about access in the wintertime. And what are some key points when you talk about in safe access control? That's important for people to think about.
Well, first off, obviously identifying where those access points are, and also noticing where your emergency egress points are going to be as well. And in the military, we like to create choke points because we want to funnel the people through, and and vehicles as well through choke points. And your main point, so like for my homestead, for instance, is a bridge. There's a bridge, there's a creek, and so you have to funnel things through it, people who are coming to visit. Now, the key though with this homestead security is how can we make it protected against the bad guys, yet welcoming for those that you want to come onto the farm, or for accepting deliveries, for instance. And I've set up a couple of different locations too. It's almost like the deliveries are done still on the outside perimeter. They don't get access towards close to the home. But by creating
interesting. So any delivery you take, no, I just want to clarify, it's an interesting concept. So any delivery you take does not come to the home. It stops at a gate or something like UPS, FedEx.
So most packages, like my Amazon packages, go to a mailing center. But if I need something because it's so heavy, I'll have it come to the gate. It's not going to go into my inner perimeter. I have it built out so that it's almost like when you do regenerative farming, you do cross-sectional fencing for your animals. It's like I have different paddocks. So if you think of it that way, I have like an exterior area, and then I have the inner cordon area. And so those are just close family friends that come and visit. But everyone else, delivery people, or I don't know them, contractors who I have to escort, then they're going to be on the outside. And they can deliver the package. I'll just have to deal with it and put it on my truck and bring it in. Yeah. But by creating these choke points, then I know the likely avenues of approach. And so when I mentioned earlier, it's people are creatures of habit. That's something to mention for just yourselves. When you're living on a homestead, you don't go in and out at the same time. You don't take the same paths, because in the military, me and my folks, we not only were we doing fortifications, we also looked for IEDs, improvised explosive devices, and we always took different routes and went out at different times so that the bad guys wouldn't be, we knew they were monitoring us. And so just kind of applying that, you can call it paranoia, but just having that observation, and I call it common sense, exercising common sense there, then observing your own patterns, but other people's patterns and other animal patterns too. But if you have these choke points set up at main access points, then I can monitor them. And if it's too far for me to see, then I'm going to have some cameras that are located out there. I'm going to have spotlights that are going to come on. I'm not going to light up my whole place so that they see it's not a Disneyland. But the key here is to use nature and have it blend in, so it doesn't look like you're living in a big prison, but that you're utilizing everything so that it is well protected, and you're using everything to your advantage, and it looks beautiful, and that you have observation of all the key points entering into the property.
So that's the blending of both control of access and welcoming.
Yeah.
access as well. So the people that you do want to come in don't feel like they're coming into a military base, military establishment. They feel
No.
welcome and safe and relaxed. But yet you still have the control you want to monitor, slow down entry. Yeah.
That's absolutely right. I was just laughing right there because as you were saying that, I had this visual in my mind, because we're not one of those that have that big welcome sign outside that a lot of people often have as looks like decor. It's only for those that we want to come, but we are we do welcome those people.
Yeah, well, and you can do that through, I mean, I love the thought of just blending some of those pieces in with nature and making a very natural, welcoming environment, you know, and I think that's pretty cool. One more before we leave access, and that's just anything on maintaining access. And I didn't get all the way through your book, but, you know, myself as a consultant, access is number one when I talk to people about property. And it's not just legal access and where is it, but it's also maintaining it. How do you see that relating to just fortification and security, the actual maintenance of your access and what goes into that?
That's near and dear. I mean, I'm glad you asked that question. I actually have to fix my road. For instance, it gets pretty muddy, especially when it starts raining a lot. And so that's something that is vital to make sure that it's cleared, the path is cleared, or if you're living in the mountains, that it's not all iced up and that there's not a log in the way. You want to be able to have clear access because it's for emergency as well to get out. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to maintain it through all the seasons.
Well, and that's exactly what I was thinking as you were talking about that. I was like, yeah, that's the other side, which we'll get to in a minute, is your emergency readiness and the safe. And that maintained access is critical to emergency readiness, you know, not just access in, but the ability to get out. And when you live in rural, you often have snow, creeks, mud, things that can slow down your access.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's move on to Fortify. Old world know-how with modern tools for durable protection. What do you mean in a snapshot? They'll have to read your book to dive deeper, but what are some key principles or points you want people to know about fortification in the safe system?
Well, for fortifying your home, yes, obviously you want to practice and have, you know, good door locks, you know, strong, sturdy windows and everything. But another thing that I do talk about is the organization of the home. Everything needs to have its own place and to be well organized, because in an emergency, you need to be able to grab. So what if you have the guns and ammo? Does everyone in the house, first off, are they trained to use it? Do they know how to use it? Do they have access to get to it quickly? But not only just guns and ammo, but everything else, you know, food, preserved foods, you know, flashlights, water, gasoline. I mean, gasoline would be outside of the home, but that also talks about like the garage and the sheds. Those things need to be well organized as well, because you need to be able to quickly get access to those things. So fortifying your home is, for me, and how I define it, is not only how do I protect what's inside in the nucleus of the homestead, but also how do I protect and defend the systems that I have built out on the homestead? How do I ensure that the water's still going on for the livestock out there? You know, how do I make sure that they're all fed as well? And so how do I protect the systems that I have going and building redundancy?
Yeah. Give us some of those redundancies that are most critical.
Well, obviously there'll be the utilities. So having power, and if you're living up north or even where we're at, we need to have good heat as well. So a reliable heat source, as well as water. And not just having one is good enough, or having a second as well, because from the military, you know, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And so we have to have 3 of everything. And oftentimes that costs a lot of money. And I definitely am sensitive to that. And when I wrote this book as well, it's like, I'm tired of everyone saying homesteading is for the wealthy. Yes. I mean, having money, you know, is key to purchasing land and purchasing a homestead. So it does require funds, but to get the homestead going and to embrace the lifestyle doesn't have to be an expensive thing. There can always be alternatives, you know, that you can do and work your way up to. Say, for example, then a whole house generator, that's very expensive and something that we've been saving for. But maybe for now, just having a little gas generator, for instance, it's just having that thought and just planning to have a backup for just in case, something that will work for now.
I think that's so well said. People, we live in this world of flip the switch, push the button, get what I want, combined with Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, visuals that create an expectancy of, top bar, highest level. And I think that creates that barrier of that, what you're talking about, where people say, well, you got to be rich to homestead. And man, when we started, we were thinking about, how do you do this on the cheap? How do you survive? How do you get by? That homesteading mentality. And I think we've lost that in just some of the modern context with all the social media that shows all the perfect stuff. And it's a journey. We're all journeying to get there. And I love what you're saying, using the power as an example. You don't have to wait until you can have a solar system and some amazing battery backup. You don't have to wait until you can have a 15, 20K inline generator. You step your way. If stepping your way is, a 2 or 3K generator that runs the fridge, and the freezers, and powers up your cell phone or whatever, so you got some comms, then you start there. And I don't think we can emphasize that enough.
Absolutely. As a family, we've been practicing cost-saving tips from the beginning, from the military and getting out of the military. My wife's been cutting my hair to save money. I mean, that's $30 every other week right there. And if you're like me, there's no shame in shopping at Harbor Freight Tools. Like, I'll get some of those tools there too, because it's just something to use and something to have right then and there. But just having this mindset, you can homestead on a budget. Okay, it's a lifestyle. And to your point, homesteading is not all pretty Instagram worthy all the time. A lot of it is rolling up your sleeves and getting dirty.
Yeah, and doing without and coming up with solutions, because you can't attain the ideal. So what can I do with what I have? I mean, that's really central to homesteading. And so it applies to security here in just about anything. All right, the E in safe, emergency readiness. Give us some core areas that are most important for people starting out. In your view, you're helping a lot of people get land and get started on a homestead. I don't know, top 3, top 5. Let's work through them. Things that you think, talking about not being able to get to the ideal and do it all at once. 1, 2, 3. What are the things that people should start focusing on when it comes to emergency readiness?
For emergency readiness, this is something that gets often overlooked. When people purchase a property, they're always dreaming about the house and how they can build onto the house, or maybe just what livestock they want to bring on. And so they think about fencing, which, is absolutely important to have good fencing. But the top 3 or 5 things that you were just talking about for emergency readiness, well, number 1 is food. Make sure you've got good food. And so there's a lot of ways that you can preserve foods, but do you have a place to safely put them, and how can you keep them organized as well? Another thing is water. Water is life. Water is absolutely essential. I agree with you. Access is so important, and water's number 2 coming on there, because you have to work with what you've got. And if you don't have a well or flowing springs on there, which a lot of my clients are looking for, but if you're tied to city water, okay, well, let's make do with that for now. How can we filter that out so that it's safe for you? And how can we figure out a redundancy built in? So maybe you can create a safe catchment system, a rain catchment system. That can be done on the cheap, and where you can get clean drinking water there. And so water is number 2. And then the third would be power generation. So if you're on the main grid, and like where we're at, it's very reliable, but how can we do small things? Maybe have the chicken coop being powered on solar, and trying these out. And oftentimes I work with people who like to do it, and maybe they're engineer minded and they want to build it themselves anyways. And so that's a way to save money and also to exercise those muscles. So power generation would be the next one. And then heat is something that cannot be ignored. And that's something where we can't wait till the winter storms are about to hit, because that's when things are going to be sold out at the hardware stores. But just having a plan of action for that. That can just be a bunch of blankets, of course. It could be something they sell where there's like this product where you can just save yourself with a blanket if you're stuck in the car, or to something like a propane tank heater. So just having a plan in place, exercising that plan, and making sure that it's not just a super secret plan, but that everyone else in the household knows about it and can actually practice it. So those are my key points. You notice I didn't put bullets in there, but those are important as well. Good for trading and good to learn and to protect yourself, but things to keep you and your loved ones alive.
Yeah, those redundancies are so important. I mean, I think Dallas a few years ago when it froze so bad and a bunch of people died because they're not used to that. If people would have had extra blankets and a Mr. Heater buddy, works on a little propane thing, not expensive, not high end, and they could have kept one room tolerable for people. And those little solutions are so important in emergency readiness. Let's go back to water for a second. I hear a lot of people say, well, I've got a well, so I'm good. Or I've got a spring, so I'm good. I don't need storage. I don't need anything else. And I'm wondering your thoughts on redundancy and whether it's whatever your source is, how do we make sure if that source fails us, we have water?
So in the military, we say complacency kills. And if you have a well or natural springs, it's always very easy to think, I'm good to go. But that can either dry up or can become quickly contaminated. We found oftentimes that when people drill wells, sometimes the water is contaminated. And so have a way to get clean drinking and clean bathing water is absolutely essential. Same thing with a well. A well can get contaminated. It can also dry up as well. So to have water stored, and I live in an area where there are people that are living off grid and they have IBC totes that they have on the back of their pickup trucks and they go and pick up water. Like they're very hardcore. But to that point, that mindset of water is absolutely critical, and that to have more than enough, to have storage of water, like have extra water, that's something that I do harp on. That's something that I do emphasize with my clients.
Yeah. I'm glad you went there. Water storage is so important. Wells break, pumps fail, all kinds of stuff goes wrong, even with wells. And that's I think personally that storage is key. And that's I just find so many people that think, well, they're good to go because they've got a well on the ground, they've got their own water or a spring, and that's great, but things fail. And it's it's kind of the same with food. And this thought's more pointed at like people have been homesteading. I've been surprised over the years how many people that I find are actually homesteading for a while. They're getting proficient at raising food, growing food, but they don't really have redundancy in storage and backup. I don't know. What is your experience? What have you seen, and how do you consult people in that manner?
A lot of times I'm consulting people who are just getting into it. So to your point, I haven't seen too many where they've had a failed system, except for, with Hurricane Helene coming through our area. Now, if hurricane had to hit anywhere, it did hit at a place where the most resilient people lived in Western North Carolina, in the hills. Those people have been prepared. A lot of them lived off grid. Not to say, I mean, they suffered, but I'm saying like it would have been catastrophic at other locations where people have been less prepared. And so just seeing that and how they grew their food, and because we had very close friends who were very, part of the relief efforts and would fill us in, and we would help contribute for those efforts. They would give us real-time news, the real news that we were hearing from the ground, not what you saw in the news, but what's going on, and to see how resilient those people were, but also to see how the community came together. And that's where I emphasize community, the local community, just coming together and helping one another out. So even though they did what they could, they may not have had a lot of storage for food or a root cellar going on because maybe they didn't have the funds or the ability to build all that stuff. The community came together and it was beautiful. And that's something that we didn't really talk about that, but that's important as well, that to have extra storage for food, but not to just be reliant on yourself, but to be reliant on the community, I believe is very important. And the only way you can do that is to build trust and build relationships within the community. And that's something my good friend Mike Dixon talks about, is to give more than you take. But how can you contribute? What skills can you learn and also provide for the local community so that you add value and bring value to the community? That's absolutely essential, because no matter how much money you have, you can't buy everything. You can't grow everything. There is no such thing as an absolute 100% perfect homestead out there. We all have to rely on one another.
Yeah. A friend of mine, Jason Ross, says, prepare to share. If we all prepared to share, that pretty neat thought. Well, hey, I want to cover one more thing.
Yeah.
We've been talking security, fortification holistically. We haven't really covered guns and bullets. And so before we go, what is your perspective? Because that is a part of the picture, even though we're trying to get people to think, and you're working to get people to think a lot broader, which I love. People getting started, what are a few things that are important when it gets down to that kind of physical security?
I am a big believer of the Second Amendment rights. And I used to work at a gun shop in California because it was a side hustle, but I wanted to get ahead of all the rules. And at that time, the governor had passed a law with ammo that we had to register ammo. It's almost as if we're purchasing a firearm. It was criminal.
I know.
So I got a job at the local gun shop, and I was helping everyone coming through the doors. And I was surprised because a lot of them were single ladies coming in, and I had a lot of fun just kind of informing them, educating them on firearms. That's something that I'm really passionate about, something that I wanted to be just an instructor and teach others on how to do concealed carry, how to properly use a firearm. Because for instance, in my home, I want to make sure that everyone in the home knows how to fire a gun. It does no good for me to own all the guns and all the ammo. I only have 2 hands. And so everyone needs to be able to be proficient in firearms. And so I'm a big believer that, handguns, though, for instance, that's just something to get you away from a bad situation. But every homesteader needs at least a shotgun and an AR, I think would be very good, just either for hunting or for protection. But that's something that I can always go down, and we can always go down that rabbit hole and geek out on different things about firearms. But I do like firearms, and I really am a big believer of getting proficiently trained, and especially with children, understanding firearms. And you can introduce them. There's no limit on the age. It's all about maturity level. And that's something that I've trained my children on, that, and also archery, because I believe archery is very good. It's great to get a food source. It's a great way to hunt for deers and also protect yourself. So that's the way that I was able to combine the two there, for instance.
Yeah. I appreciate the call to training and proficiency. And I think that's another part of, preparedness is not just going and buying a gun and getting a bunch of ammo. You got to use it. You need to get some training, particularly if you weren't raised around firearms. But even if you were, self-defense and situational, like if you're really thinking about, am I going to protect my homestead and I have to use a firearm? There's things you need to understand besides how to shoot a gun out in the field when everything's calm and still, right? That's one skill. Hunting's another skill. And then being able to maintain your presence and deal with a situation if you ever do get into a situation where you've got to protect your homestead, that takes training. And so glad to see you bring that up. We could talk this all day, Tim, and I'm going to look forward, just because I get to talk to you, to talking shop more along the way. But for everybody listening, a good start is to go get Tim's book here. Fortify Your Farm. Tim, where can folks find this to dive a little deeper and open up this conversation in your safe method?
You can go to thecalltofarms.com or thehomesteadingagent.com. Those are my 2 websites to get more information on homestead security, as well as purchasing your homestead. You can also go ahead.
Nope. Sounds like you were going to go there. I was going to ask you about your course.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. Yes. I will. So in addition to this book, I've also am releasing a homestead security mastery course that's going to be released on August 4th. And especially to your audience as well, there's going to be a link below that they can click on, and they will also get not only access to the security course. Now, I go into way more detail than I do in the book. And they can even check it out right now and see all the different sub modules that I go into. For instance, all about lighting. Lighting is like a separate module that I will talk about. Emergency supplies. We'll talk about visitor protocols, low tech versus high tech and what to use, how to build layered security, how to incorporate natural barriers and permaculture within the security. So it goes into all of these different things on video, and they can check that out at thecalltofarms.com. I'm really excited, and I'm really, I forgot to mention then, for your audience as well, I'm going to give them a free copy, electronic copy of my book if they purchase the course. And
very cool. Thank
you. No problem. And then you can also find more information on me on Instagram at Homesteading Agent.
All right. Homesteading Agent. You guys, if you're looking for a place in that part of the country, check Tim out. Everybody needs to be thinking about homestead security. And I love, again, your approach, Tim, and the holisticness of it. When I started flipping through the book, I was like, oh my goodness, so much of this is just reflects what I've learned over the years in just running a homestead, and is going to be a huge help to me in thinking through. It's one of the areas we want to grow in is that security element a little bit more. So super, super helpful. Been really, really good to hang out with you. Thanks for joining us. And Tim, I'll see you soon. Talk to you soon. We'll hear in just a minute. And everybody else, see you soon. Thanks again, Tim.
Yep. Thank you so much, Josh. It was an honor.